Thank you all so much for being here. This is our first of a series of member-led webinars. My name is Grace Moreno. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts LGBT Chamber of Commerce. For the last 12 weeks, as you all know, we've been focused on making sure that we could help every one of you find the resources you need to stabilize your businesses during this pandemic. Now we've gotten past some of that. We're still here for you if you need anything, questions, things that seem confusing, which everything seems confusing right now. Give us a call or send us an email, and we're happy to try to find the right answers for you. Now that we've gotten sort of past that initial stage, we're returning to focus on some of our chamber's work. And part of that work is to bring you ways to make strong connections, to build relationships with places that might bring you business or might bring you joy, and also how to tap into resources that we have among us, and so that we can strengthen our businesses. Today, I'm very happy to announce that we're kicking off this series with Douglas Spencer, owner of Spencer Brenneman, a brand strategy firm that helps companies and organizations define their purpose, define how they're going to be seen in the world and how to work. I have to say that one of the best things I've done as an executive director of this organization was to work with Douglas around this time last year. He really helped us define who the chamber is and how we want it to be seen, and everything that we did with him now really colors all of our work throughout what we do. When we do our strategic planning, when we do our fundraising, when we do our programming, all of that stems from the work that we've done, that we did with Douglas. So I'm gonna let him give you his wisdom. He is speaking about issues today that are really relevant to what we're all doing and going through. And after this hour, you're gonna be ready to go back to your business and hit it out of the park. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for being members, and thank you for being a part of this amazing community. So Douglas.
Grace, thank you very much. That was a lovely introduction, and I really enjoyed our time working together last year. I'm going to use some of that work as an example throughout this presentation. We are coming into a new normal. We still don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it's coming, and we need to be ready for it. And in some respects, this is a great opportunity for us all to step back and think about our businesses, think about our work, and how that can best connect with the people most important to our success. Grace gave you my introduction. I also wrote a book you can find on Amazon. And before I started my own business 5.5 years ago, I was global head of brand for a large multinational corporation, and that was a lot of fun, but I am happy to be on my own now, as many of you are. Okay, by the way, feel free to feed the fear of missing out for all those who are not here. On almost every page, I list both my Twitter handle and the Chamber's, so feel free to send anything out that resonates with you that you would like to share with others. Okay, so agenda is very simple today. We're going to do three things. We're going to talk about messaging and its job. And when I say a new angle, that really all does come down to messaging. In fact, most everything comes down to messaging. Then we're going to talk about short-term messaging. How should we approach messaging now in this state that we're in? And then, as I referenced before, the new normal. How should we approach messaging that way? So three sections, and then we're going to have plenty of time for questions, which you can submit in the chat, and we'll take it from there. So first of all, let's talk about messaging's job. I always think of mowing lawns because that was my first job as a child when I think about jobs. So I really love this picture. But messaging's job really has three things. Especially in the for-profit sector. It is meant to attract attention, to engage people, and to sell. So first of all, when you talk about attracting, you've got to grab the attention of those most critical to your success. Not everybody. You do not need to get in front of everybody. So you just want to focus on those that you need to get in front of, your prospects, customers, potential and current employees. What you say has to resonate with them and it has to stick with them. So you really have to think carefully about this stage. And you have to pique their interest enough to learn more. And here's a mistake that a lot of us make, and it's totally understandable. It's completely natural. We try to get right to the close immediately. We try to get to the sale right away, but you just can't. Messaging won't work long term that way. You've got to pique their interest enough to learn more. You really have to differentiate yourself from other choices that people have. And you or we in our heads know exactly why we are so much better than all the other choices. But you know what? No one else does, because they don't live and breathe our work the way we do. And you have to tap into some sort of an existing or latent need. And we'll talk about all of these in more detail. When it comes to engaging with them, you also, again, have to differentiate yourself from the choices that people have. And you have to connect with them on an emotional level, regardless of what you're selling. Whether you're a B2B or B2C vendor, you have to connect with people on an individual and emotional level. And you have to paint a picture for them of what their life will be like once you are working with them. And you got to excite them. Again, no matter what you're selling, even if it's something as mundane as, I don't know, nuts and bolts, literal nuts and bolts, you need to excite them. And then finally, to sell, you've got to solidify that emotional connection you've made with people in the attract phase. In the you got to initiate the relationship, and you've got to reassure and continue to engage them along the way. So the sell process isn't a one and done. The sell process is a start of something, and you've got to continually nurture that relationship. Now, even if it's something that you only sell once, you still have to nurture the relationship, because they're a source of prospects for you, a source of new business. And you do have to set the scene for long-term profitable relationships. And you can't do any of that if you don't take a methodical approach. So let's first now talk about short-term messaging. How do we talk to people now in the middle of this pandemic? It's a really touchy subject, and it's something that we need to think carefully about. So everyone knows that there's a lot going on in everybody's heads right now. We unfortunately passed 100,000 deaths in the United States this week, which means that at least 12 people for every single one of those deaths, at least, are suffering. People are feeling isolated, whether it's just missing a hug or a handshake. Everyone at some level is feeling some sort of isolation. A lot of people are exhausted. They're working full time, teaching the children at home. Personally, I am cooking all my meals, which is nothing that I did before, and I'm doing all my cleaning, which is nothing I ever did before, which is nothing compared to what other folks are going through. But the point is, everybody on some level is more exhausted than they're used to. And let's face it, this isn't going away anytime soon. Predictions of a resurgence are coming, which makes everybody anxious. So when you take all of these things into consideration, you have to take all of these things into consideration when you are messaging to folks. And the best way to do that is just put yourself in their shoes. Just think about what they're going through. Show some empathy for what they're going through, especially if their experience is unlike yours. Be sincere in your communication. People can sniff insincerity now a mile away. And you have to be authentic in what you're providing, what you're trying to say, and most importantly, you have to be authentic in whom you present yourself to be. And in many respects, that's an advantage that the LGBTQ community has over a lot of folks, because we work really hard at identifying our authentic selves and bringing that to every situation. So put yourself in the shoes of those you're trying to reach and show empathy, sincerity, and authenticity. In addition, try to include a tone of hope, because we're all dealing with these emotions at some level. Injecting some sort of a hope is necessary. We all need a little hope that things are going to get better, that we will make it through all of this. And so if you are able to inject a level of hope in your message, in your routine business message, that's going to help create this emotional connection you have with your buyers. And again, we'll talk a bit more about that. In these times, it's really important to dial down you and dial up them. Now, there's always a balance between talking about yourself too much versus talking about them too much. If you talk about them too much, you don't differentiate yourself from the other options people have. If you talk about yourself too much, then they don't care. They don't want to hear about you. They want to hear about what you can do for them. So you always have to find that balance of you versus them in your messaging, but now you need to dial up the them just a little bit. And you got to remember, this is a relationship you're building. You've got to think about building a relationship. And then also you have to stay focused on one message at a time. I know it's tempting to create emails that have lots of different topics going on, but you really have to focus on one message at a time. So here's some samples I found that might be helpful. This is an email from Lowe's, and in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see what the whole email, but I've broken it up so you can read it. And I think this one does a really nice job of finding that balance between you, the vendor, and them, the customer. So you start off the first page, it's make the most of your family time. Try these fun and easy projects. And then it goes on to a little video of wooden robots. Nothing about Lowe's, nothing about selling. But then down later, then they start offering some ideas of projects you can do at home while you are sheltering in place. And then some things you can do with your kids. So they started out the relationship in this particular email on the consumer, not on themselves. Another example is this company. I don't even know where they're from, but they do a really nice job here of creating a relationship. So right here off the bat, we talk about shipping's delayed, sorry, but that sets a relationship in that, hey, we're in this too, we're suffering, we're all in this together. They then talk about maintaining your humanity, again, sharing a common experience. And then here's where they really start to build a relationship. Message us and we'll send you a special treat. So this is not a hardcore sell right now. This is a setting the stage for life with them during the pandemic. And then, you know, the granddaddy of all brands, the Meryl Streep of brands is Apple. And I think this is a great example of how they have curated things that they offer in their store just for this situation. Again, there's a lot of empathy in here. There's a lot of sincerity. And you know, authenticity in that this is what Apple does, and this is how they see themselves helping. So if you have the opportunity to curate some ideas or some of your offerings specifically for this time, that would be a brilliant thing to do. So as a reminder, when you deliver your message in the short term, you've got to show empathy, sincerity, and authenticity. Try to include a tone of hope, dial down the you, dial up the them, and then build the relationship. Stay focused on one message at a time. So those are my thoughts on how you approach short-term messaging. But more importantly, I think we should avail ourselves of this opportunity to think about our long-term message, about the long-term focus of our businesses. And I will tell you, I am in that same boat with you. I am working very hard at thinking about my message in the long term and how I need to make changes to it in this time. So let me walk you through the process that I walk all of our clients through, as well as I'm walking through myself right now. So the core elements of any strong message, there are three of them, and it starts off with the why. Why do you do what you do? Why is it important to you? Why should anyone care? Why do you care? These are really important questions, and it's not to make money. There's any number of ways most of us can make money. That is the outcome of what we do. But why do we do what we do? Next is what and how. What do we do and how is it different from all the other choices that people have? This is incredibly important because otherwise we don't stand out in the crowd. And we're going to talk about how you do that in a second. And then finally is the way you come to life. The way you come to life really taps into those emotional triggers that you need to connect with consumers. And these reinforce the actual words you pick. So the why, the what and how, and the way. And we're going to talk about every single one of those. But how? How do you do it? So remember the goal of messaging is to attract, engage, and sell. All right, so we've got a message. How do we find it? Well, the first step is you. We really have to think about ourselves and our relationship to our business, our relationship to what we do, our relationship to those we serve, to those we work with. Then we have to think carefully about them, all these people that are important to our success, whether that's, again, prospects, clients, and employees. We have to think about them and where their heads are at. We have to, and using those two, using those two exercises, we begin to put together our what and how. We begin to put together our way. Now, it's important to keep in mind that this is an ongoing process. Messages have to evolve. And so right now, we're here. As I said, I'm here right now too. I am going through this process myself to think about how I'm going to talk long-term to the people I serve. So let's dig down into each one of these a bit more. So let's talk about the you. So there's an author named Simon Sinek. He wrote a book called Start With Why. And his premise is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. What you do just simply is a proof point to what you believe. And if you haven't seen him before, when we're done, Google his name, Simon Sinek, on YouTube, and Simon Sinek TED Talk, Start With Why. It's a bit dated, but it's still really powerful. So why you do what you do is incredibly important. So when you think about your why, there's three things to keep in mind. It has to be grounded in reality. It cannot be completely made up. It must have relevance to your business, which seems kind of obvious. But there also has to have an emotional component. We're going to talk a lot about that as we move forward. It has to tap into emotion that you have or that you as your organization has about what you do. And it has to connect on some sort of human level. And then it has to be aspirational. It doesn't have to be 100% true right now. It doesn't even have to be completely attainable. It just has to be aspirational. So here are some examples of brands that have really strong whys that I think we can learn from. The first is FedEx. Their why is deliver peace of mind. Nothing to do with packages, nothing to do with letters. It is delivering peace of mind to their customers. Next is our friends across the Charles River in Cambridge, Akamai. They're there to transform the way people live, work, and entertain themselves. It's not about technology. It's about the transformation that technology enables. Again, Apple, these folks are great. We want to make a dent in the universe by challenging the status quo and thinking differently. We believe equally in art and technology. And this is an Apple store somewhere in China. And I think that's a beautiful representation of both art and technology all in one. And then Nike, bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete, asterisk, in the world. Asterisk, if you have a body, you're an athlete. I have a body, I'm not an athlete. This is the aspirational element of it. But also keep in mind that the why is not the same thing as their tagline. Those are two different things. And now let's talk about the Chamber. This is an example of the work that we did with the Chamber last year, inclusive relationships driving economic impact. So their why is to drive economic impact for our community. And then because children with dirty feet are icky, cobbler's children should have shoes, and so should I. Here is my brand promise for my existing business, and that is to bring the rewards of articulating, embracing, and sharing your true self with the world to organizations and people alike. Now, as I said, I'm working on this, and I will probably tweak it a little bit, but this is very important to me. You know, as an openly gay man, I have really benefited from being open and authentic with who I am, both personally and professionally. My career actually didn't take off until I came out as to myself and to the world. So I feel really passionate about the fact that authenticity is important for people and organizations to do their best. So that's my why. How do you get there? Well, you have to ask yourselves. You have to sit down with everybody that's involved. If you're a solopreneur, that's just you. But if you're a team, you need to get the voices, your leadership team, you need to get people together around the table, and you need to ask really, really deep questions. So you need to ask questions like, what need do we really meet? Why is that important from the broadest perspective possible? How is supporting this work motivating what we do? How does it help us get up in the morning to do what we do? Why have we chosen to follow this why as opposed to another why? And what do we love most about this work? These are the questions that you can ask yourself to help you really get your head around your why. And it's not just for the messaging exercise why this is important. There's a number of reasons. First of all, consumers demand it more and more. The latest generation of consumers put a high premium on organizations that stand for something. Something like 92% of millennials will switch brands if they don't feel a connection with one brand over another. And 60-some% will take a low-paying job just to connect with an organization that they believe in. So, consumers are going to demand it. Second of all, you're going to get better results. We all know that we do what we love better than we do what we hate. Just look at any teenager, and you can tell that. And then finally, I got to say it, life is short. Do you really want to spend your time doing something you hate or don't get excited about? So this exercise can really help you address all three of those things. Getting ready for consumer demand, doing your best possible job, and making the most of our time here on the planet. That's just my soapbox. Thank you for letting me have that. So let's talk about them now. Let's talk about the people who are most important to your success: prospects, clients, employees. So first of all, you have to find the balance. And I'm talking now specifically about prospects and clients. You have to find the balance between how many people you can help and the people with the most similar needs. Unless you're Amazon, which pretty much serves everybody, you've got to pick something. You can't be all things to all people. So you have to think about balancing how many people can I help with the most similar needs. And if it's too much on one side, then your message is diluted. And this is, again, something I'm struggling with myself. The message can be diluted if you're trying to cast a net that's too broad. On the other hand, if you're too narrow, there's not a lot of people to support and help, and you may not be able to get your business where it needs to be. So you've got to find that balance. So when you think about their why, and this is what we're doing in this part of the exercise, thinking about their why, it too has to be grounded in reality. It has to have some objective component, some real practical impact, which again might sound like duh, but you'll understand in a second. It too has to be emotional. It has to tap into an emotional driver, which we're going to get into again in just a second. And it has to be aspirational. The emotional element has to inspire in some level. So when I talk about grounded in reality and being emotional and aspirational, here's what I mean. Every single decision we make as human beings has an analytical side and an emotional side. Whether that's what to wear in the morning, whether that's what job to take, whether that's how to invest our money, there's an analytical and an emotional side to each one of those. So in marketing, your fact sheets, your fact and figures, things like that speak to the analytical side, and it's your messaging and your brand that speaks to the emotional side. Let me give you some examples. So let's say you are a mechanic, you look at these tools. Craftsman's a great brand. I need these things to make a living. I need these to feed my family. But that same mechanic might say to herself, I will be proud of the work I do with these tools. So it's setting a real need, feeding your family, and an emotional need, being proud. Cars are a great example. I need to safely transport my family, but I also want to make a statement about my successes. And it goes both ways. It doesn't have to be about that. It could be about, I need to safely transport my family, and I need to be proud knowing that I am helping the environment. From a business perspective, I need an accountant to help me pay my taxes. Seriously, I need an accountant to help me pay my taxes. I am rubbish with numbers. But I also want to feel confident around the financial decisions I make. So again, every decision we make, especially your buyers, no matter if they're business to business or business to consumer, every decision has an emotional and an analytical side. Lots of different emotions. It could be confidence, pride, satisfaction, peace of mind, relief that you don't have to worry about something, exhilaration that this is going to change everything, superiority, love. Any of these, any emotion, positive emotion you can think of is often what you are selling. And that is the secret, my friends. Most of the time, the emotion wins out over the analytic. So emotional selling to a person's emotion is really important, because at the end of the day, I want to feel confident about my taxes. I don't necessarily care that they're filed. I just want to feel confident that the IRS is not going to come knocking. I want to make certain I'm proud of the work I do, things like that. So think carefully about the emotions. And again, you're going to have to sit down with your customers, whether that's virtually or literally, which I don't think is a thing anymore, at least not for a while, or get some sort of data that you can find. It doesn't have to be primary data. If you have access to secondary data, that's great too. But you've got to ask questions like, what do they think they need? And is that really what they need? So for example, many times people will come to us saying, we need a new website. Okay, yeah, that's not what you need. What you need is to step back and think about your message. Your website's not working, not because it's designed badly, it's because your message is all over the place. So what do they think they need, and what do they really need? Why has meeting this need been so elusive to them? A lot of folks try to do this all themselves, and they can't. As someone once said to me, you can't read the jar, you can't read the label on a jar if you're inside the jar. That's one reason. How do they anticipate their needs to change in the future? How do they perceive, how are the people important to their success? How do they perceive them? What about their competitors? How are their competitors perceived? Other people, other organizations that are adjacent to them? All these kind of questions will really help you understand the people that you are working with that are most important to your success. Okay, so we've got all of that now. Let's say we understand we understand ourselves, we understand the people we're trying to support. Now it's trying to determine the what and how. How do we stand out and get attention for the work that we do better than everybody else? So as I referenced, we start with you, we understand them, and then there's an overlap between the two that gives us our what and how, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So let's first of all talk about the what in the what and how. Your why relative to their needs is your what, and here are some examples. Let's start out with an organization we all love, the Chamber. Again, their why is inclusive relationships driving economic impact. One of their what's is opportunities to get to know corporate sourcing professionals. We have Grace and her team orchestrate opportunities for us to get in front of corporate sourcing professionals. That's one of their what's. Let's go back to FedEx. Deliver peace of mind. Parcels delivered on time. That is their what. Akamai, transforming the way people live, work, and entertain. They provide content delivery networks and web and internet security services. That's their what. And then one of my clients has a why of unleashing the power of people's passions to transform, engage, and grow. And they are a social media amplification platform. That's their what. They help groups of people share messages online quickly and easily. All right, so that's the what. What about the how? The how is how you deliver what you do differently and better than anyone else. You have to find what is relevant and competitively differentiated from all the other choices people have. But first, you have to be very careful. It's so easy to hang your hat on qualities that almost anybody can claim. You may deliver the best customer service of any of your competitors, but you know what? All your competitors can reasonably claim that they have excellent customer service too. You've got to think very carefully about what truly makes you different and not just the things that you're proud of. Let me give you some examples. So again, the phrase I like to use is relevant and competitively differentiated. So I love WBUR. I listen to it every single morning. But I got to tell you, their tagline, home of the region's largest radio newsroom, to me, that's irrelevant. I don't care. I don't care how many people they have. I just care that they are doing their job of delivering objective and important news. And then we've all seen these descriptions of hotels. Ooh, an AM FM alarm clock. That's exciting. Coffee and tea maker in the room. Yeah. Okay. These are not relevant or competitively differentiated. Big old fail. Now, I love this next example because people always love it. I was visiting a client in Denver once, and I was in the elevator, and I see this OMG TBISC. Oh, well, obviously, this teenage girl is saying, oh my gosh, this bed is so clean. Yeah, I don't have a teenage child, but I am pretty certain that no teenager has ever typed that. But anyway, oh my gosh, this bed is so clean. Here's the kicker. Clean sheets and duvet covers for each new guest. Okay, here, if we were all in the same room, is where we would all do a collective, ew. This is ridiculous. Yes, clean sheets and duvet covers. That is not competitively differentiated. It's relevant, but it's not competitively differentiated. So this is a big old fail. So you've got to think really carefully about what you do that is completely different and relevant to the people you serve. All right, let's go back to the chamber. Opportunities to get to know corporate sourcing professionals. That was one of their what's. Foster meaningful relationships amongst and between member businesses and corporate partners. And compared to other organizations like the chamber, other chambers, other business organizations, this is definitely something that they do well that the other organizations do not. Let's talk about my social media amplification platform. My client, build a culture to support each other personally and professionally, resulting in team focused on clients and individuals, as well as organizations. And what this is them during their sales process, during their customer success process, they are selling to the manager and the people on their teams that are using the product. They're not selling to the organization. They focus their message on how does this make your job easier? Not how does it make your company more profitable? How does this make your job easier? And that is a distinct difference from their competitors. I have another client that does tax and strategy and technology, and their how is, we are not chained to a process over practicality. Instead, we apply the law logically, not literally. I guarantee you, a lawyer didn't look at this, but anyway, that's how they approach it. They want to be seen as reasonable. Many of their competitors are black and white and very cold and institutional. Okay, that's your what and how, but your what and how actually serves even a bigger purpose, and that is keeping you focused. I see this with all the organizations we help, especially the mission-driven ones, and that is people get sucked into the day-to-day. The squeakiest wheels are what get the most attention, and that makes total sense. That leads to some short-term wins, but over the long term, that means your focus gets a little fuzzy, your message can get diluted, sometimes even contradictory. Your what and how, when it is carefully designed, can keep you focused. And here's some examples. Let's go back to, this is an easy one. Let's go back to our friends at the chamber. One of their what and hows is help members and partners grow, compete, and succeed. So I'm going to show you two things. Which one of these two things is in line with that point of focus? Which one of those two things? Only publishing directories, or sessions like this one where people share their expertise? So obviously sessions like this one, if they were someone to say, oh, let's just publish a directory, the chamber team could say, oh, no, that's not who we are. That's not our focus. Here's another example from Apple. So a special app to connect the newest AirPods with the older phones, or updating the operating system so that all the peripherals work with all the phones. Again, pretty easy. The operating system, something to make certain that technology works seamlessly. Let's make a hypothetical. Company that helps, there's a software company that helps people with their expenses. Their what and how is using the latest technology, a chat-based support on the website or a 1-800 number. Yeah, pretty simple. I think you can see where I'm going with this. One last one, a corporate caterer focused on flexible ordering, invoices due on the 1st of each month, or customers select the day that they pay each month. This is pretty clear. And the point here also is that it's not just marketing people that have to think about the brand. It's everybody. The accounts receivable team needs to understand that if I work for a brand that touts flexibility, we need to make sure that our processes are flexible. So that's how the what and how can keep you focused. Now let's talk about the way you come to life. And to this, we're going to come back to our friend with all of the emotions. The way you come to life is really important because that, again, taps into that emotional connection you have when you're trying to attract, retain, and sell to folks. So here we're going to talk again about the emotional why of yourself and the emotional why of the people you are trying to serve. Must tap into emotions, very similar. Has to connect on a human level, very similar. So how does that look? Well, here's an example. These are two very well-known brands. I took these from their websites. They pretty much say exactly the same thing, but they say it differently. Neither is better than the other. They're just different. But go ahead and read those. I'll give you a second as read those, and then I'll show you who they are, and you can understand, and you can get a sense of how the way really influences messaging. This part is really hard to do virtually because I can't get a sense of how people are doing with their reading. But two different tones of voice. Any surprise? Again, one is not better than the other, but one is more in line of how we think about one versus how we think of the other. So this is an example of how the way comes to life through messaging. All right, let's look at some more examples. So our friends at Chambers, their ways are strategic, innovative, bold, and committed. That comes to life visually in their new logo, which Narissa Fry, another member of the Chamber, created from. This is a stunning logo, and it is bold because of the use of colors and how the colors are used together. So that is an example of how their way comes to life visually. For my own brand, our way is passionate, humorous, industrious, and creative. And so a phrase from our website is from embracing technology so we can work smarter and faster to not letting perfect be the enemy of finished, we get work done. So that's how my way comes to life in my messaging. I had the social amplification client. They had playful as one of their ways. And here's an example of content from their website. Conferences, they're a lot like the first day of a county fair. So much to do, where to start? The opportunity to make a splash on social media can feel similarly overwhelming. So here's how their way comes to life verbally. So messaging absolutes. We've talked about the why, the how, the emotion, your authenticity, your differentiation, and the emotional connection you can create with the people most important to your success. But one thing we haven't talked about is a messaging absolute, and that is consistency. When you create a message, you have got to commit to it. It is incredibly important. I cannot stress it enough. Inconsistency is enemy number one of a strong brand. So here, don't take my word for it. Here's some stats, because we all love stats. 23% average revenue increase for companies that present their message consistently everywhere. 4 times increased visibility. And this makes sense because we are used to seeing things over and over again. So if we run the same digital ad over and over again, people will see it, and over time, it will become more effective because of the repetition. And 26% more customer loyalty to organizations that are consistent in how they present themselves, consistent in how they go about working with the people they work with. So that takes on many forms. So one is commitment. I tell this story pretty often. I was at a conference a number of years ago, and the chief marketing officer at Nissan was there, and he said that any new vehicle has to, when it goes in front of the committee of people who approve new vehicles, I don't know, whoever that is, they have to answer not questions about competitive displacement, not questions about margins. They have to answer questions. How is this new model going to stay consistent with our what and how? Consistency is for everyone. I alluded to this before, but everyone at your organization needs to understand your message and why it's important. They need to understand how to bring that to life in their specific roles. And then it has to show up everywhere. This is just one example of a brand that does a really great job. You know, you can look at any of these and immediately see that it is the one brand. And so they are consistently bringing that to life. But it doesn't have to be physical, as I referenced with the the accounts receivable example. It has to be there everywhere. Okay, so as a wrap up to this part, wrap up, get it? Lunchtime. Messaging is designed to attract, engage, and sell. And you do that through the way you come to life, what and how you do, and why you do what you do. Very important. For short-term messaging, oh, and you have to do it consistently. I can't believe I forgot that because it's one of my soapboxes. And then for short-term, a wrap-up, you have to show empathy and sincerity. Include a tone of hope, dial down the you, build a relationship, and stay focused on one message at a time. And then finally, for long-term messaging, it has to be authentically committed to your why. It has to be differentiated and relevant. It has to connect emotionally, and it has to be sustained consistently. So that is the process of how you find your message for the long term, how you really get your focus in order. And here's the secret. What I just showed you, that was your brand. I don't use the term brand a lot anymore because people automatically go to logo when I say brand, but what I just described, that's your brand. So your identity, how you connect, and how you commit to it. All right, so that's all I have. And let's see, Michael, are there any questions that people want to ask? Ask me anything.
Hi, yes. Hi, everybody. This is Michael with the Chamber. If you have any questions for Douglas, feel free to submit them in the chat to me, and then I will be relaying them to Douglas. Thank you.
Or if you want to just send me, there's my email, plenty of ways to find me. Feel free to do so. So I will say that the process we went through last year with the Chamber was great. We did a number of interviews with folks, maybe some of you. We did quantitative research. We did online surveys. And then we had a workshop with Grace and members of her board that really brought together, the picture I showed of people going over to try to figure out the why. That's what we did. And it was really exciting. It was really a fun exercise, and people came to it with real enthusiasm and sincerity. And I think that completely helped the outcomes be so great. So there's one question that's a really good one. Solopreneur, what do I suggest for solopreneurs in terms of marketing the individual versus more a company-like brand? That's a really tough question, and that's something that you have to, it's a case by case. You can't, there's no broad answer. I am a solopreneur, but I use heavily a team of contractors, freelancers. So I do position myself as an agency because I am an agency. It's just a virtual one. But I do know folks that are individuals, Karen Young. She is an individual and she is a consultant. And so she's Karen Young Consulting, which makes perfect sense. So, and I'm happy to talk to whoever asked the question. If you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to walk you through or the pluses and minuses of that, but it's kind of a complicated question. The second question is, any recommendations for name choice of a new business? Perhaps a book that is tried and true for brand naming. Wow, that's a good question. There probably is. I don't know of a go-to book for that. The process that we just went through can actually help you with that, because it will help you figure out what is the best way to bring yourself to life. I do have a course that I created for folks that has a section on naming, and if you're a member of the chamber, I'm happy to give that to you for free. So go ahead and reach out to me. Yeah, I think those are the only two questions we had. So if you have any more questions, bring them my way. Happy to.
Thank you all so much for being here. I think one of the pieces that I want to urge everybody to think about is, and I have seen this time and time and time again with businesses I've had and with organizations I've run, everybody thinks that this piece is not as important as getting the work done. And so you're out there working because that has to get done. There's deadlines. This is such a strategic and efficient piece of work that we should all do with our companies. Getting this piece right is worth the investment, and it's going to save you time and money and really differentiate you from others. I just want to say that I know that this kind of thing can feel expensive. It really isn't if you focus on how it's going to impact your bottom line and how things are going to move forward. I know that Douglas has been willing to do short consults with members, to help you figure out where you are and then, figure out how else he can maybe help you. I think it's worth doing. The goal here for all of us is to emerge out of this pandemic stronger and ready to take on more business and be more competitive once we're out there all looking for business. And so rarely do we have this time to reflect and have, and have some time at home to work on, even though we're all very busy still. It's a good time to sort of look at your organization, look at your company, and figure out how you're going to be ready for what's coming next as soon as it does.